There we go. Well, tonight, this is just an orientation to what is the ACT, answer any of your questions, kind of give you an overview of what we do. Being a new presbytery, we're just coming on our second anniversary. We're still finding little glitches here and there that we have to tweak and adjust. And so sometimes we're making changes to different position descriptions, that kind of thing. But the administration and coordinating team, also known as ACT, somehow we just couldn't we couldn't call it ACT. It just didn't work for us. So we call it ACT. The ACT it's fairly simple the way it's structured. We have co-moderators, Pete and David, at this point, and they are like most of our committees. The moderators are not selected by the committee; they are elected by the presbytery, and I'll point out why that's important a little bit as we get down a little bit to why, especially our moderators have to be elected by the presbytery. The ACT, like most Presbyterian things, are 3 classes of 4 plus the presbytery moderator plus the vice moderator and the past moderator. They all have just 3-year terms. So Sue, who's has come on this year as the vice moderator, she'll only serve for 3 years. Now, after her 3 years, can she get elected for another 3 years? Yes, she can, but she only is on a 3-year term, not a 3-year plus another 3-year, technically. And then the presbytery leader, the stated clerk, the financial administrator, which is Liz Hutchinson, and our treasurer, Becky Moody, are all on the team also ex officio. And they all kind of have a role of things they have to do to report at these meetings. The meetings are technically 5 times a year, plus a presbytery budget meeting. Usually in August is when we have the budget meeting. We'll do other things, but the main focus of that meeting is the presbytery budget, with the idea that the budget goes to the September presbytery meeting for a first read and then voted on at the November meeting. Most years that's how it works. During the pandemic, it didn't work that way, but last year we got back onto that cycle, so that was kind of good. We normally meet the 4th Tuesday of the month opposite the presbytery meeting. So we'll have our first meeting here in February because our presbytery meeting was in January, and then ACT meets in February, presbytery meets in March, ACT meets in April, except in the summer. That's a little different, but 5 times a year. And in November, there's a November presbytery meeting, and then we normally have a late November ACT meeting. We don't meet during December normally. There are work teams within the ACT. So you'll be on the ACT, which meets those 5 times plus extra meetings. But then you have a work team, and that work team does not meet at the same time. They will meet separately, mostly on call by the moderator of that particular team. Most of them don't have set, monthly meetings. We have the personnel team, there is a position description in the Dropbox for the personnel team. It is made up of members of the ACT and people from outside ACT, and those outside ACT, along with ACT members, are on rotating classes. They are usually invited. Someone will say, this person would make a good personnel team member, and they are invited to serve more than nominated. We might get into more nominating at some point, but right now it just works this way. Worship team, There is sort of a nominal position description. We might want to work on that this year. The team is made up of members of the ACT and people outside of ACT, just like the other one with rotating classes. The worship team mostly does presbytery worship, communion, that what you see at the presbytery meeting, they do the planning for that and over the years. And maybe if we have special presbytery gatherings like we did for the retirement, they may do some worship on that, but right now it's presbytery worship. Except for ordinations and installations, that's a whole different presbytery worship. Budget and finance team, they are responsible for the budget process and oversight of the budget and financial management throughout the year. They work with Becky and Liz on just making sure things are going smoothly, any changes that need to be made. They will receive the audit report, those kind of things, and be part of any financial discussions that happen in the presbytery for a variety of reasons. We have the personnel, worship, and budget. Those have pretty much always been there, kind of teams. And now we have a funds development team, which we've had off and on over the years with Newton. But the funds development team implements the long-range financial sustainability plan that we have. They work with per capita and mission giving interpretation. All those per capita stories that you see and mission giving stories and things you get with your financial reports that you get from the presbytery, that's what they do. And they also do legacy giving. We have a legacy plan, and we're doing actually more work on it next. That's kind of our next focus. Brad is on the funds development team. When you see videos, I want to point this out. When you ever see a presbytery video, it now starts with a little thank you for your gift. That's the funds development team that added that specifically. I just give, a little shout out to Brad. That was his idea. So we have that. The discernment team is a team that is starting up next week. Next Monday, they meet. Monday, Tuesday, one of those days.
Tuesday.
And Tuesday, is it Tuesday? Okay, it was one of those days, Monday or Tuesday. We're meeting Tuesday. This is a special team that the ACT put together way back when we first started in 2021, but because of the pandemic, we just couldn't get going on it. It just didn't feel like it was the right time to do it because there was so much else going on. But just last November, the ACT said it's time to put the discernment team together. And this is a team that will be leading the presbytery through a discernment process as a new presbytery, where we will be asking, where is God calling the presbytery? So that team begins next week, and we'll be leading the presbytery through a discernment process for the next 12 to 14 months. Hopefully by this time next year, we'll be wrapping it up. That's our goal. We don't know. And Sue, Kale, and Tracy Henry are from the ACT are serving on that team. The team, ACT can also put together other teams as they see a need for short-term or longer-term projects. So we are pretty flexible. We do have a team that has not been established yet, but it is in our documents, and we're supposed to have an investment committee. So that is something we'll be working on this year, is how we're going to do that investment committee, because it's part of our investment policy. So those are the teams we have now. The responsibilities of the ACT can be divided into three kind of broad categories. The first one is what I call the balcony view category. That is one of the responsibilities, is to have the balcony view of the presbytery. And then they have what is also called the on the floor view of the presbytery, being right down in the midst of the work that's happening. And then there is the commissioned. We are commissioned by the presbytery to be able to do particular things that normally the presbytery has to approve, but we act on behalf of the presbytery, and we've been commissioned by the presbytery for those things. The balcony view and the on the floor are the work of adaptive leadership, I call it. Heifetz and Linsky, in their work of the adaptive leadership, the practice of adaptive leadership, and other books, have pointed out that organizations cannot have just the get it done responsibilities, the on the floor, just the in the midst of the work, but also have to have the view from the balcony. And that is been given that responsibility to have that big balcony view, that big view of all that's going on. That is the responsibility of the ACT. So some of our balcony view responsibilities is coordinating the work of the presbytery. And that's vague, yes, but on purpose. So we basically do coordinate the work. And if there's a place where the work isn't getting done or isn't being coordinated, it is the ACT's responsibility to figure out how to get it done, or to get it going, or get it started. That's their work. They are to explore the vision of the presbytery's journey. That's that discernment. And once their discernment is completed, to make sure that it is implemented, and over the years, make sure that it still is the vision of the presbytery. They also have the responsibility of telling our story as a presbytery and communicating that story. We do that through a variety of ways, but they have the big overview of that. They are to serve as the interpreter of the mission and ministry of the presbytery to whomever it needs to be interpreted to. And part of their job is to encourage the generosity of the congregations. That falls under that financial management kind of stuff. But again, it's that balcony view of the financials of the presbytery. But then we have the on the floor view. This is the technical, getting into the work. Again, coordinating the work of the presbytery, not just the big view, but also all the daily stuff, the things that have to happen. They organize the presbytery meetings, the planning, the content, and the worship. They do that, which reminds me, going back to the committees and teams, I left out a real big committee, the executive team. The executive team, once the ACT has looked at, for May, we want this to be kind of the theme and the content, and they do that kind of the brainstorming of the presbytery meeting. They then hand it over to the executive team, who's pretty much their only job is to implement those ideas and to do the details of the presbytery meeting, such as the agenda, who's the timing, that kind of stuff. So that's the executive team. I knew I missed somebody. So we missed the executive team, but that's how they do the big planning. The executive team implements that plan. They are responsible for preparing the annual budget through the finance and budget team. They oversee the financial books, records, and accounts of the presbytery, making sure those are done, making sure the audit is done, that kind of thing, done again through the finance and budget team. They oversee the other documents of the presbytery. That's just the stated clerk stuff that has to be done. That is part of their job. Nominating the nominating committee, because obviously the nominating committee can't nominate themselves. So we nominate the nominating committee. Overseeing matters of personnel in relations to the paid and volunteer staff. They are through the personnel committee is part of their work, and providing oversight of all the continuing mission partnerships, and also relating to all the other councils of the church, Synod, General Assembly, but also any ecumenical relationships also. And the third component of the ACT's work is the commissioning. The Presbytery commissions, in their position description, it says this: the Presbytery commissions the ACT, the administration and coordinating team, to the following. And a lot of our teams and committees have some component of commissioning. Well, I should say COM, property, CPM, all have those. And the commission responsibilities is to serve as the board of trustees for the corporation and to report actions of the trustees at the meetings of the presbytery. So we don't have a board of trustees. The ACT is the trustees of the presbytery. So in our bylaws, the moderator, not, it's usually the one who was first elected. So in this case, it's David Harvey, because he was elected before Pete, is the president of the corporation. So by New Jersey corporation, not-for-profit corporation laws, the president, the vice president, and the treasurer of the corporation have to be elected by the body or by the board. So that is why our moderators have to be elected because they are the corporation board. The vice president of the corporation is actually the moderator of the property and insurance team. And then the treasurer, Becky, is the treasurer. Yeah, kind of thing. They also assume specific authority for the oversight of continuing mission partnerships. And this is something that is a little thing, but we needed to include that in the commissioning. We do have, someone needs to be able to manage or with the continuing partnerships or to create new ones when needed. The continuing partnerships of the presbytery, we only have two at this moment, and one is Johnsonburg. So Johnsonburg, anything related to Johnsonburg is part of the ACT, and the other one is Blair Academy. And for those of you who are not from Newton Presbytery, Blair Academy is a private school in Blairstown, that historically has been part of the presbytery for, is David Harvey on now?
175 years.
Thank you, David, for 175. And so we have a partnership with them. And back in the mid-90s, it became, it's now a different type of partnership, but we still have a strong connection because of the way it was given to the presbytery. So Blair Academy, we do have, that's one of our mission partnerships that we do have oversight between David, and we have 3 trustees that we elect, and then we have a coordinating, what's the
Blair Consultation Committee.
Consultation Committee. So we do have, connections there, but for the most part, it's not as big as it would have been 40 years ago, where we acted as the board of directors or had a bigger part. But it is still part of the presbytery. So those are our 2 mission partners that come under the authority of ACT. The other things that we are commissioned to do is act between presbytery meetings on behalf of the presbytery in matters when it is not practical or expedient for the presbytery to meet, and to report such actions at the next presbytery meeting. This gives the ACT a lot of latitude for actions that maybe need to happen in a timely fashion, but we can't wait for the next presbytery meeting to happen to do so. One, we just recently, this last early winter, we called a special ACT meeting to approve an administrative commission. Because it was after, it was not going to be expedient to wait until the next presbytery meeting. So we did that kind of thing. So they can appoint administrative commissions kind of thing. But they can do things like help with, we need to approve a sale of a property. The ACT can do that on behalf of the presbytery. This also includes approving, modifying, adopting, and interpreting procedures, policies that need to be done in a timely fashion. Can't wait for the next meeting, because there's a big time between the May meeting and the September meeting, especially. Approving descriptions of or appointing members for administrative commissions, like I just said, other than installation and ordination commissions, which is done by the Committee on Ministry. And sometimes, like this last time, we needed an AC just days after the last presbytery meeting, so we couldn't wait. So they did that. They can also approve expenditures as required, including operating and capitalized expenses. Sometimes we need to pay for something extra outside of the budget, and we just can't wait until the presbytery gives us permission to do that. We haven't had to do that as Highlands Presbytery, but we did under Newton when the furnace went out at the presbytery office. We needed a new furnace, and we had to take it out of investment money. So that's, they can approve that kind of thing. That is really the quick overview of what the ACT does. The big part is knowing that the ACT meets 5 times a year plus the budget meeting, and then the teams meet around that, mostly on call, to do the work, those bits of work for ACT. Are there any questions?